Hey consumers, welcome back to Amateur Consumption. I'm Isaac.
And I'm Mary. So as you can see, we're in the car. This episode of Amateur Consumption is going to go over our Napa trip and our experience here. So we decided to go to Napa since I had a work trip to San Francisco. We had gone to Sonoma before, so Napa was the obvious choice for a close wine region.
Our first day we had set up Peju and Italics.
So first was Peju. We were running a bit late after getting the rental car from the airport, traffic in San Francisco, etc., etc.
Yeah, it totally wasn't our fault.
So we called Peju and they were really accommodating, but we really weren't sure what type of tasting we would be able to fit in the time that we had before the next appointment.
So when you first arrive at Peju, the first thing that catches your eye are these trees. They're kind of squiggle trees. You'll see them in the video. And they go out when they plant a new tree and they encourage it to grow a certain way.
Yeah.
So they all match on the property. It's a pretty unique feature.
We talked to the receptionist essentially at Peju about how much time we have and our appointment that we're running a little bit late. And she was actually able to fit us into a normal tasting at the bar in a group of people, so we were able to fit that in.
Did offer us a bottle of wine to enjoy on the grounds if our tasting didn't fit in, which was very accommodating and a great opportunity in case for whatever reason it didn't work out.
So the first wine we tasted was a Sauvignon Blanc. We did their standard tasting offering. They do have one that is a bit higher end as well. And from there, I think we might have had a Chardonnay, but then we dove into the reds. The standout for us was definitely the Sauvignon Blanc. It was really nice and crisp, refreshing, and a really great value for the price point. It came in under $30. So in relation to what we said about having a bottle on the ground, if you're running short on time, that's a really great option to just pick up a bottle of that Sauvignon Blanc. It's gonna cost you, definitely less than the tasting would even, and you'll be able to relax, enjoy the grounds as well.
If you like Sauvignon Blanc in general, maybe just skip the tasting and drink that because it was that good. It was a really good Sauvignon Blanc. Definitely a recommendation. Our next tasting was at Italics. We were also running late to there because we got late to Peju and we're kind of trying to catch up the whole time.
Yes.
We were kind of worried because some wineries in the valley can be a little bit stringent on time, and so we were just going to show up and hopefully be able to still do the tasting that we had scheduled.
So we pulled into Italics, which was really cool. We were really excited to go to this one since it had been featured in Netflix documentary Decanted on the creation and origination of the Italics winery. So it's a little bit surreal pulling in to Italics and seeing everything that's in the documentary. Immediately when we get out of the car, we were greeted by John, who took care of us the whole time. He immediately handed us 2 glasses of wine. And that was just a great way to kick off the tasting and go from there.
The best part about starting off that way was it started off with a conversation. We weren't ushered into this tasting, this formal setting. It was really just like 3 people who have been friends for a while, kicking back, drinking some wine, and really just seeing the property and getting to know it. It was a really great way to start off. I'd highly recommend that for sure.
And Italics has a really, really nice view. That's one thing based on its location. It's very close by, only about 10 minutes from downtown Napa. And for how close it is to downtown, the view is amazing. So after talking to John for a bit, we were taken inside to do the tour of the caves.
The tour started with a barrel tasting of their Chardonnay, which is a really great treat. It's not something you get every day to get a barrel tasting. It doesn't really taste like a finished wine, but it was a really great opportunity to see flavors in construction is kind of how I thought of it. How a Chardonnay, you know what it's going to taste like, and you're tasting those flavors kind of coming together in the moment. Not quite there yet, but it was a really great opportunity to do that.
The caves at Italics were really pretty large, and there was a lot of area to cover, so we were able to walk through and just kind of peek down other hallways. And they even have an area that they're storing barrels for other wineries in the area as well, since they have some extra space right now, which really shows how involved they are in the Napa community as well. So after the caves, we started our sit-down tasting at Italics. So we had already tasted 2 whites with the glass from outside and the barrel tasting. So this sit-down tasting was all reds, and it came with a nice little charcuterie plate, which was nice. It's nice to be able to snack while tasting, especially those little crackers, cleanse your palate. So there were a ton of standouts at Italics. We loved every single wine that we had there, but specifically the Cab Franc stuck out to us, and the Petit Verdot ended up being probably, if not the favorite from the whole Napa trip, definitely one of the top ones.
Italics their largest production is the 16 appellations, and so that might be one that you're familiar with if you've seen it on a wine list. And so that was really good, but in our opinion, probably the worst one of the tasting, and that's saying a lot because it was still far above average in terms of a great wine. And so this was a great wine, and everything else they had on the docket that day was even better than that. And so we decided to join the wine club at Italics. It's definitely worth our money, I think, and we're really excited about getting our hands on some of their wine.
So the next day we had appointments at Barnett and also at Palmaz.
And we weren't late to either of them.
We kicked off the morning going to Barnett, which is up on a mountain. So that was a bit of a drive, but it was really, really a beautiful drive. First through Napa and then up the mountainside for about 20 minutes.
So we arrived at Barnett, parked our car, and were able to kind of admire the views for a little while. It was stunning. Being on top of a mountain, seeing the valley below you, being surrounded by vineyards, it was definitely a sight to behold.
After we had been there for a few minutes checking out the views, we were taken to the area that we would be doing our tasting, which was very close to where we had been standing by, but just had some tables and chairs, so essentially a patio area at the top of the mountain. From there, we were taken through our tasting, once again starting with a Sauvignon Blanc, which was very typical throughout our tastings in Napa, either that or some sort of blend. They had Sauvignon Blanc. Good way to kick off the tasting.
Next, we went through the variety of reds, and the standout winner here was their flagship red, Rattlesnake. It had a great balance. It was complex, really bold finish. It's a really great wine to sit down and drink. Probably gonna want some food with it, but that's just the average person. I would sit there and drink a big bowl of red just by itself, just to admire the qualities that it had.
So the reason Rattlesnake is called Rattlesnake is that when the Barnett family acquired the land, they found a bunch of rattlesnakes where they wanted to plant the vineyards, specifically where the vineyards for the grapes that are used to make rattlesnakes are still planted.
So the other couple that we were tasting with had brought some food along, because after you're tasting at Barnett, if you'd like to, you can set up and do a picnic for food. Unfortunately, we had another wine tasting, so that'll have to wait till next time.
So next we headed to Palmaz.
Dr. Palmaz is a heart specialist who invented the heart stent. So naturally, inventing one of the modern medicinal miracles of our age, he was quite wealthy and decided to build one of the most preeminent, technologically advanced wineries in Napa Valley. And it was a really treat to be able to go there and check it out.
We had heard before we went to Palmaz that the winery is seen as kind of the Willy Wonka of Napa, and I think it definitely lived up to that expectation.
I didn't see any fizzy lifting drink.
You know?
It would have been great in that center room.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that Palmaz became so technologically advanced, aside from Dr. Palmaz's original career, is that they had 2 kids. And the first they had a daughter, and she was very poised, had a good palate, perfect for the wine industry, great. And then they had their son, and he was less into the wine drinking or tasting and the politics of it all, but he was very into technology. And so he started doing coding and essentially ended up writing this massive system that they now use at the winery to monitor how the wine ferments, how it's aging, and all of those different aspects.
One of the standout features that I saw at Palmaz was the entire facility is gravity fed. And so from the time the grapes are brought into the facility and dumped into the first bin to the time when they're put into bottles, it's all gravity fed, no pumps. And that's kind of an industry gold standard that not a lot of wineries have. And they do that because the pumps add additional oxygen and additional textures to the wine so that it may come out less true to the grapes. And they thought, if we're spending all this time, all this money monitoring all these grapes in their fermentation process, where they're grown, all of that, we want to make sure that we're giving them the best opportunity to be true to form. One of the most visually appealing parts of the technology that you could see just visiting was the heat monitoring in all of the individual tanks. And so when you're looking at each individual tank, there are many different temperature sensors on the inside. And part of that technology allows them to see what the temperature of the wine as it's fermenting is doing in the tank. And so if there's a cold spot, they can adjust the heat or the coldness there. If there's a hot spot, they can adjust it there to keep all of the wine the same temperature throughout the whole fermentation process.
So after we had a tour of the Palmaz facility, we were taken to do a tasting. And this tasting was definitely more on the upscale, fancier side of any tasting that we've ever done, aside from maybe a wine dinner of sorts. And each tasting of wine came with an individual bite.
And they were high quality too. I mean, we were talking Wagyu beef, truffle, a lot of really high quality ingredients.
So all of the wine that we tasted during that tasting and the bites were all fantastic. But one thing that stood out, aside from the high quality of the wine, that was different from other wineries was they had a Riesling available. And that was just something that was very different and really enjoyable that we didn't see anywhere else in Napa.
After Palmaz, we went to downtown Napa with the intention of going to the opening of the Stone Brewery tap room. Along the way, we thought maybe we should visit some local shops, see if there was anything that really stuck out. Our first stop was Theif, and it was a great one.
So walking into the Theif, it's a collaborative tasting room, so a lot of different wineries give their wine or make their wine available to this tasting room to pour in tastings. And then for people coming to the tasting room, you don't have to pick just one winery to taste. You could do a flight with, say, 4 wines and taste 4 different wineries, say their flagship cab from 4 different places. So that's a really cool way to be able to taste a lot of different wineries and see what they're doing and maybe do some more side-by-side comparison that you can't do just by visiting a winery alone.
My favorite thing about Theif was the staff. They were knowledgeable, they were friendly, but they also engaged on a deeper level than normal. I feel like a lot of times when drinking wine at a wine tasting, you get kind of the standard story about the wine and then you're left to your own devices. But here we were able to really talk about what we saw in the wine. We were able to talk about what our favorite wines were, and they were able to really use that information to match us with wine that they thought we might like. It was a really great opportunity, and we highly recommend going and visiting Theif.
So from Theif, they suggested that we go down to Krupp Brothers, which was right down the street, and they suggested a specific red that they really thought that we would enjoy. Going into Krupp Brothers, there were options for tastings, having a glass of wine or a bottle of wine. So since we had a specific wine in mind, we opted to go the route of having a glass.
But as Mary and I do in most shops, it didn't end with just that glass. We ended up trying the rosé and one of the flagship cabs, and it was a really great experience, but it typically goes farther than intended.
Yeah.
My favorite part was the gift booth. There was no peanut butter. It was definitely a gift booth. But they had little things that you could use props to mock up, and you can take a GIF and it has the Krupp Brothers logo, and you can send that to yourself, so that was a lot of fun.
From there, we finally went to Stone Brewery.
The tap room opening was a hit in Napa. There was so many people there. But we felt that the service was actually really, really good for the amount of people that they had. They were definitely doing the best that they could.
Yeah, getting a beer didn't really take any longer than it would if they didn't have the crowds that they did that night, which I thought was really impressive. The space was also really nice, pretty open on the inside, so lots of standing room. And then outside, they had some picnic tables, so you could sit outside really close to the river, so a nice view as well.
We eventually did get a table for food. We sat with some folks that we had met there that night, and it was a lot of fun. So the last stop on our way out of Napa was Davis Estates. We were leaving that morning, and we had one more opportunity to go to a winery. Before we went to Napa, we did reach out to Davis Estates with our YouTube channel and Mary's Vintner blog, and we asked them if we could come and do a piece on them, and they decided to comp our tastings in lieu of that, and so we just wanted to be upfront about that.
So going up to Davis Estates, although it's not up a mountain, it had a really nice view of Napa just with how and where the winery is situated. So the parking's all in the back, allowing for really nice views of vineyards in the front. And the tasting room was probably one of the nicest tasting rooms, prettiest tasting rooms that we were in over the weekend.
But to get any more about Davis Estates, you'll have to check out our full video on them coming soon. I want to do a special thanks to Kyle Groombridge. Without him, this trip wouldn't have been possible, and I just want to say thanks, bud.
Overall, we had a great trip in Napa and would suggest all of these wineries. If you have any specific questions about why we went to one versus another one, or any more details that you would like to know about any of these wineries, please feel free to comment, reach out, and we'll definitely get back to you.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Amateur Consumption. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, subscribe for more, and we'll see you next time.
Drink more wine.